Thank you for joining us today. My name is J.B. Mills, and I'll be hosting the webinar, Mobile Requires a Strategy, presented by STRATEG Corporation and Propelics, and sponsored by SAP. These three industry leaders have joined together to provide insight into creating a mobile strategy and preparing your organization to successfully deploy mobility by developing a plan for successful execution. Our speakers today include Peter Dalpy, Vice President of Managed Services for STRATEG Corporation, and Shahab Chowdhury, co-founder and partner for Propelics. In our session, we will explore the complexities around mobile in the enterprise and how STRATEG's managed mobile services can simplify many of the challenges. We will review best practices in enterprise mobile strategy and planning focused on three core areas of business process review: mobile readiness and developing a mobility roadmap. Finally, we will highlight how STRATEG's MDM administration and support services are being leveraged in the enterprise. To begin our presentation, I'd like to introduce Peter Dalpy, VP of Mobile Services for STRATEG Corporation.
Thank you, JB, and thanks to everyone for joining our webinar this afternoon. The managed mobile services market is not a new market. Companies like STRATEG have been supporting mobile solutions in the enterprise for many years. What is new is the speed at which mobile is being adopted, both in our personal and our work lives. The complexity has also changed dramatically, with multiple operating systems, devices, carriers, and applications all requiring support, while user expectations for having a satisfying experience have really skyrocketed. With this complex market, it's not surprising that an organization such as Gartner, one of the leading analysts to the managed mobile services marketplace, has defined the market and is analyzing the capabilities of suppliers in this marketplace for their customers. Let's take a look at Gartner's view of the market. They define the MMS market as the IT and process management services that are required to plan, procure, provision, manage, and support not only corporate devices, but also bring your own device, so individual liable devices that have access to the corporate network. Corporate devices include rugged smartphones, tablet devices, and purpose-built field force devices. How's the market moving? The market is moving very quickly. It's estimated about 7.8 million devices under management across 18 global MMS providers that were included in Gartner's recent Magic Quadrant. There's an estimated 50% growth rate for this market over 2013 and 14 as more enterprise customers look for outsourcing of managed mobile services to organizations that can help take the complexity out of mobile and help them deploy it more quickly. What are some of the market drivers of this? Well, accelerated mobile demand. People are adopting mobile at a faster rate than we've ever seen. Convergence, where personal really meets the enterprise. So devices are not only used for work purposes, also for socializing with coworkers and customers. The complexity of mobile. We talked about the multiple operating systems, some of the other areas that add complexity into that environment. And then the resource availability within the enterprise itself and the expertise that's available to the enterprise to support all these complexities that we have in the mobile ecosystem. There's also the mobile strategy requirements. It's no longer useful to develop a point solution when you're looking at mobile. You really have to look at mobile as it impacts your entire organization now. Then your speed to market. How fast can you get a mobile application to market that may absolutely change your competitive positioning? That's a critical component. And finally, of course, cost reduction of your overall costs for supporting your organization and your customers. Let's take a look at some statistics that back up this data that Gartner has been collecting. By 2015, it's expected that at least 70% of the transactions or interactions that you receive from either your associates or from your customers are actually going to originate from a mobile device. We also see that 97% of organizations have indicated that either some or all of their employees have employee-liable devices that they're currently using to connect to the corporate network. And finally, 90% of CIOs are expecting to deploy mobile applications within their company in the next 6 to 12 months. And what Stratix has found is that what that has created is what we call the mobility gap. And that's the gap that exists right now between the expectation of the enterprise business, of the business owners within your organization, your associates, and also your customers, of what they're expecting mobile to deliver to them. And that's the gap between their expectation level and the resources and the expertise that most organizations have in-house to actually support those expectations. So while user expectations continue to accelerate and really go through the roof, the resources that are being applied to satisfy those expectations are remaining flat. That's where organizations like a managed mobile solutions provider can help you. If we take a look at Stratix and who we are a managed mobile services provider. We're ranked in the top tier of Gartner's Magic Quadrant, mainly because of our ability to execute, our market vision, our broad partnerships with many of the ecosystem players in the mobile marketplace, the strong managed services capabilities across multiple platforms, and the customer experience and reference that we're the largest MMS provider with over 800,000 devices under management. And our mission is very simple. We focus on simplifying mobility so that our customers can focus on what they do best, and that's run their business. Stratix has accomplished this by developing a platform of services. These services can be leveraged in their entirety, or they can be chosen on a menu basis. And it all starts with planning, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's planning your mobile strategy and how you're going to not only deploy mobile, but support it once it's in the enterprise. From a deployment perspective, we really focus on the speed to market and providing a scalable process that can be repeated over and over again so that an associate receives the same experience, whether they're getting a new device or a device that's being returned to replace a lost or stolen device. From a support perspective, you have to be prepared to take that call, that support call that comes in. And mobile calls are very personal and very different from the typical calls that you get with an IT support desk. So we've learned to become very mobile-centric with associates who are mobile-focused and understand the mobile marketplace so that they can address these questions. You also have, from a support perspective, on how do you replace devices that are lost, broken, or stolen, particularly devices that are running a line of business application, which we'll be talking about in a few minutes, and how critical that line of business application may be to your business. And finally, on the analyze side, analytics, it's to not just provide reports or data, but how do we provide prescriptive data, meaning data that you can take action on and actually continue to leverage the full capabilities of your mobile infrastructure for your users. So for today, we're going to actually focus on the planning phase and the strategy and MDM implementation phase of our support services. JB?
Thank you, Peter. Next, I'd like to introduce Shahab Chowdhury, the co-founder and partner of Propelics. Shahab will take us through the 7 considerations for your enterprise mobile strategy.
Thank you, JB, for the introduction, and thanks, Peter, for framing some of the challenges that enterprise companies are focused on as they embark on their mobile strategy. And so, as you discussed some of the trends that are evolving, I wanted to follow that up with some of the considerations that we have in place from our discussions with our clients, from talking to companies who have embarked on this journey already, and what are some of the things that we have been advising companies on. So the key here is to keep in mind that none of these considerations are meant to be a list of these are the 7 things that you figure out and you have an answer to your mobile strategy. These are some of the considerations. And then later on, I'll jump into a little bit of how do you pull these together into a plan, as Peter talked about, as being the first component of this methodology that we're going to talk about today. The first one I'd like to talk about when we talk about these 7 considerations is around not thinking about starting off with an app and thinking that you have a strategy in place. Oftentimes what we see in these kind of situations is companies that have started with an app that is in place already and using that app as a way to be able to answer your mobile enterprise strategy questions. And we think that it's a good way to start off on mobile, but after that first set of apps has been built, if you don't get some level of convergence on your strategy, there's an opportunity for you to fall into what we call either the one and done phenomenon, which is we have an app, so we must have a strategy, or the other way around, which is that you start to get a little bit of the Wild West, which I'll talk about a little bit as well. And the way to think about the strategy for the enterprise is really to think about a collection of apps that is grounded in some very good foundational elements that support mobile strategy, both from an IT and business perspective, and having a very clear sense of which apps make sense for your business at what point of the maturity of the organization. And so along those lines, we suggest building some level of a roadmap into your strategy exercise as you do the plan. And as you would expect, it is based on typical driver analysis of where does the value come from, what is your organizational readiness like to be able to adopt some of these strategies, which apps make the most sense where you have a demand and an audience that will actually be able to use it frequently enough to create the ROI that you're after. And so there's a few different dimensions that can come together in this road mapping framework that we recommend. And using something similar to this is not new in organizations. However, the mobile knowledge you need to have to be able to do that ranking accurately, we think is something that organizations are struggling with. And the way to go about it is to really marry in that mobile strategy your overall business strategy, which is based on what drivers do you have, where is the business headed, what kind of an opportunity do you have to either create a net new space or to potentially create a new channel, or to potentially, by way of convergence of channels, harness maybe an opportunity that exists in the market. What kind of process innovation and challenging the status quo can go on during this process is very critical as part of your business strategy exercise. And what initially triggered the need for transformation? Was it a competitive disadvantage? Was it a cost efficiency opportunity? Was it a growth opportunity? And so kind of tying all that together, you need to have a very good sense of what this business strategy needs to look like. With that being one driver, the other aspect that's obviously very critical is to understand from an IT infrastructure perspective, where do you stand from a mobile readiness perspective? So a lot of the capabilities that exist within an organization from a technology perspective are still very valid and relevant when it comes to mobile. However, many other areas are new to the mix of things that IT needs to be able to support. Having a good handle on not only what those areas are, but also to understand what is the expected effort associated with bringing them to a level where they can be successfully leveraged as part of mobile is equally critical. We suggest bringing those two together into the enterprise mobile strategy, which then forms what your innovation portfolio should look like, which, as you would expect, has a collection of apps, strategies, activities, and action plans. And from there, you can embark on the process of building your applications in a sequence that is defined by your roadmap. The second consideration, and I mentioned a little bit of this, is sort of the opposite of the one and done scenario, which is the Wild West of app development. We see this a lot, and a lot of this is happening just because there's some aspects of mobile that are different than what IT organizations are used to in the past. It's definitely a very cool area, and everybody wants to be a part of that cool type of innovation. And so that sometimes promotes people going out there and building apps without truly tying them back to a strategy. And likewise, kind of being able to claim that, you have mobile apps sometimes puts you in a different quadrant, or at least people believe so. So that has been driving a lot of this type of discussion as well. Companies are going to build apps. There's no way around it. And, the easiest way to do it is to just build the app and not do the strategy. And there's a little bit of hesitation in the marketplace around, we do a strategy, we're going to end up delaying our apps. And we have seen in that haste to build these applications what we call the random acts of mobile, which is use cases that were not meant to be delivered in a mobile app can sometimes get delivered in a mobile app through a combination of features that really don't deliver on the value that you expected out of a mobile app tied to a business driver.
And the last piece is that you may end up building the wrong apps. And so if you haven't rationalized the demand, you don't know where the true opportunity within your organization lies. And so being able to go through a process where you have a very good handle on the overall app portfolio and having an app portfolio that has some sense of ranking across various different dimensions like business value and ease of implementation and readiness, as well as making sure that the breadth of your portfolio goes beyond just the consumer-facing applications. And so being able to talk to the various different business functions, the functional areas within an organization, from marketing to the customer-facing sales organizations to internal-facing groups, making sure that you've gone through and put together a portfolio that has a representation from the use cases from all of those different areas. We think this is a critical component. We rank it very high in terms of areas where companies go wrong in putting together their mobile strategy. The third one is just coming from the background of being able to build applications and having a fairly large investment in how IT organizations have grown in building applications and infrastructure that's been put in place. Mobility is not something that you can think of as a bolt-on to those homogeneous systems that have been built and grown over time. And the first thing that we see in that is this rush to go do virtualization of existing applications that were never built with mobile, that didn't even know that mobile was going to be something at some point that was going to be supported. Certainly the case with some applications that have been around for a very long time. And to try and present those on a mobile device through desktop virtualization. We find that to be the lowest common denominator of presenting capabilities from within the enterprise into a mobile device. The other aspect of that is also use cases around, we have data stores, why don't we expose them and put them onto a mobile device? Continuing down that spectrum, applications where it was never part of the project plan, and towards the very end somebody decided that we need to have a mobile component, and definitely ends up looking and feeling like a bolt-on. And the last piece that we see a lot is giving a web front end on a mobile device to try and mimic capabilities from an enterprise application, CRM systems, ERP systems, other more involved homegrown systems. And any mobile applications built with that in mind, if they start to become a part of your portfolio, if these tactics end up being a part of your mobile strategy, we think you're leaving a huge opportunity on the table where innovation and ideation that's mobile specific is really where the true potential of mobile gets unlocked. And we caution companies to not just be driving their mobile strategy based on the use cases that are grounded in how IT has been working on these issues in the past. The fourth consideration that I'd like to talk about is around what types of applications you should be building and what types of applications should be a part of your enterprise mobile portfolio. Consumer applications are a big part of what an organization needs to do to make sure the brand is appropriately represented in the mobile space. Mobile applications in the consumer world are expected now as a cost of doing business. But there is a whole world when it comes to mobile strategy beyond consumer applications that an enterprise needs to be thinking about when they put together their mobile strategy. But what I mean by that is applications that are used still maybe perhaps in customer-facing interactions, but more used by your employees, either in the sales process or at events or opportunities where you can educate and engage a customer using a mobile app and unlock some of the data that exists behind the enterprise, bring it to the customer, make it very accessible to them. And then along those lines, we have partner reseller type of use cases that we think is a huge opportunity for a company to put a strong focus on. Lots of channel type of applications, reseller type of applications we think have huge ROIs associated with them. We see lots of companies not thinking about them from the get-go and trying to retrofit those back into their mobile strategy. And last but not least is the employee-facing applications. Initial implementations of those we saw in the form of applications for expense reporting and for travel approval, but the more substantial one are really in the form of where you can better prepare an employee to be able to conduct a business function that they were conducting in a suboptimal way in the past. So this is sort of the buckets of use cases and applications that you need to be thinking about when you think about the types of applications on your mobile portfolio. Along with that comes the challenge of how do you take these applications and pull them into the mobile, not only the form factor, but in the mobile domain. And one of the things that we like to talk about there is the simplification of the enterprise. Very hard to do for companies that have invested a lot in building huge, complex, feature-rich applications. However, that's exactly what we encourage people not to do when they think about mobile applications. So in your mobile strategy, not only should the application and the user experience be simple, but also the type of data and the types of use cases you're trying to encapsulate in the mobile application needs to be fairly straightforward. And trying to expose every feature and function, trying to recreate the desktop experience using a mobile application, the experience in itself is one component of it, but the business process can be so much more simpler and tailored to exactly when the mobile app will be used, and tying to that scenario, you need to design the user experience to be appropriate with that. And something that I'd like to talk about there is that user experience is not just a collection of the UI elements. It's not just the colors and the buttons and the drop shadow on the different things that you can do. It's not also the collection of how many ways you can customize what you do. It's not also a collection of just all the forms and features and functions. The user experience is really about taking a use case and bringing it together onto a mobile device in a way that helps you do something from point A to point B in a very, very elegant and so simple way. That's really the beauty of the mobile device, that it's very lightweight, it's always on, and you're not having to struggle through 16 different layers of authentication. Even though all of that infrastructure is there, that complexity is hidden from the user. So very important consideration. We think that companies that are not grounded in this discipline, this is a new competency within the organization, struggle with this initially. However, it needs to be a huge part of your mobile strategy. On the list, along with that, is understanding the readiness of the enterprise to be able to take on mobile. I talked about these in the foundation and the technical strategy, which was part of the very first consideration, where you need to understand where you are with regards to supporting mobile from infrastructure and technology capability perspective. So I'd like to share the different dimensions that you have to be thinking about. And so mobile application development, mobile security, mobile infrastructure is made up of what we think are these 8 or 10 different areas. Starting from just understanding, do you have a mobile strategy, and if not, what's missing? Do you even know which direction you would go in? And is it a marketing-facing mobile strategy? Is it an all-encompassing mobile strategy? Those are some of the elements that go into that first consideration. On down, some of the things I'd like to point out, having the network infrastructure to make sure you can support the types of use cases, the types of applications you'll be building in the future. And again, keep in mind both internal and external-facing applications. The external-facing applications have a different set of security challenges in terms of the data you're exposing. Internal use cases, we think, have an even higher challenge in terms of the type of expectations internal users have for the data that they would like to have access to. So understanding that you have the network and security infrastructure, understanding that you have the IT delivery and support infrastructure in place to be able to support these applications once they're rolled out. Simple things along the lines of, if somebody's mobile device is not working, do they call their carrier or do they call the support desk within the organization? Those kind of challenges have not been thought through in the traditional support model. In a lot of cases in your mobile strategy, if you don't account for those, the first results are pretty overwhelming from a barrage of calls coming in when the first set of mobile applications are rolled out, and the support desk is overwhelmed with those kind of challenges. Likewise, around security, I talked about managing these devices through MDM platforms, building app stores, being able to containerize some of these applications. These are very high on the list of things that IT is always concerned about, yet at the same time, the maturity and understanding to be able to accomplish all that sometimes doesn't exist within the organization. There's also a new set of challenges when you have to solve these problems. Enterprise architect type of roles are not yet skilled to be able to actually take these things into account. And so you definitely need to be able to have a partner who can actually help you not only provide answers, but more importantly, make sure you're asking the right questions to start with. And then the last one I'd like to wrap up with is how do you pull all of these considerations together? It seems like there's a lot to do. And one of the things that we've been starting to see a lot more, there's definitely been a shift where initially it started with people just thinking of these as solutions that had to be taken on with IT. I think now they're being realized that there's a need for a mobile center of excellence that can provide guidance. And so on an ongoing basis, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. This is definitely a moving target. Mobility is in its very early stages, and as technologies on all of those different layers and all of these different areas evolve, it is very hard for application teams or infrastructure teams to stay on top of it. Having somebody who's focused on this as their primary function as part of a mobile COE is definitely something that we're starting to recommend a lot more. We think that the maturity within the organizations has starting to get to a point where having a function like this makes a lot of sense. It is definitely something that we're recommending can be accomplished through the federation of and coordination of capabilities that exist within the organization. But somebody who's thinking with a mobile perspective all the time is what we think is one of the critical pieces of this mobile COE. And some of the data is starting to point to this now, where companies are definitely starting to focus on this a lot more. We've seen a transition from 2012 to 2013 where this is top of mind consideration for people. Even if they do have a COE, in some cases, it's not clear what the function is, what the charter is, what type of a structure needs to be used, what area does it focus on. And I would say there's two specific areas where two types of COEs that we have seen recently, and we think that you need to have a very good handle on which one you're looking to build. One is what we would call a mobile COE, and this encompasses everything and anything that has to do with mobile, including your infrastructure, your support processes, your business processes. And the other one that we're starting to see is a subset of the first one, which is really more of a mobile app COE. And this is for companies that are really in their infancy in terms of their adoption of mobile. And they're just starting with, as I pointed out earlier, maybe the first foray into mobile is just to be able to focus on a strategy around maybe an application or two. And there, too, there's an opportunity to converge on a standard that helps you get through that process. So with those 7 considerations, obviously the question arises, there's a lot to do here, and reading between the lines, as I'm sure you can tell, there's the interplay of these 7 and a lot of other considerations that make up your mobile strategy. There's a lot to do, and a lot of companies don't have the time to be able to go through this in a 6, 8, 10-month process. So an approach and a plan up front that gets you through some of these challenges quickly is what we recommend. And so this is a daunting list, and as you go through this discussion, there is a lot of consideration for a while. There's a lot, and this may take long. We think that doing nothing actually will take longer. And so the cost of analysis paralysis in the mobile world, which is moving at such a rapid pace, is a significant consideration as part of your mobile strategy. So taking that into account, we do these things in what we call the Mobile App Strategy Kickstart. A lot of what Peter talked about earlier. Along those lines, there is an approach that we'd like to at least provide as a guideline for. These are the 3 steps that you got to go through as you put this mobile strategy together, which is a combination of some very good solid direction setting up front, understanding what your business drivers are, what is the opportunity for you to innovate, and being able to truly understand where are the hotspots in your organization for mobile innovation. And after you identify those hotspots, before you jump into building applications for that area, doing a good plan in step 2 around generating some ideas that go beyond just bolt-on ideas, generating ideas that are truly innovative and tied to your drivers and will actually give you a step function change in some of those drivers, having an understanding of what is the type of use cases and how will that fit in a combination of corporate-owned devices, bring your own device type of scenarios, and scenarios that you don't want to support because the value versus risk equation is skewed in a way that actually you cannot afford to jump in and build those. From that, building that app roadmap that I introduced earlier, I shared with you an example of that. Innovation through visualization is a big component of mobile, only because in the mobile world, things are moving very fast when it comes to application development, and also some of these concepts are very, very new. And so for Folks who are trying to define business requirements, it's a lot easier to do that if you have some capability to be able to innovate using some visualization techniques. So as you define this roadmap, being able to take some components of that and be able to ideate using visualization, we think is a very critical aspect in this step. And then, not to be forgotten, obviously, by far the biggest component is to understand your technology maturity. Putting all that together in step 3 typically results in a roadmap that is thought through from all angles, give you something that's very actionable. It is something that you can tie to some level of phasing and some sense of timeline. And that's typically the process that we'd like to go through in a very quick process, in a very quick kickstart process. It has worked very well, and a lot of companies who were struggling with these types of considerations have gone through this process to arrive at the end to find themselves that they have a roadmap to execute on. So from just summing up the 7 considerations, I want to just, again, reiterate that it's by no means one more important than the other, have to be all put together into an approach, hence a comprehensive approach is needed.
Thank you, Shahab. So Peter, as consumer and enterprise continue to converge through initiatives such as BYOD, many organizations are being tasked to develop and deliver solutions around secure access of corporate data. Solutions such as MDM have quickly become an industry standard to secure, monitor, and manage and support mobile devices. Peter Dalpy will now present MDM solutions and processes to select, deploy, and support MDM in an enterprise environment.
Thank you, JB. I appreciate that. Mobile device management is certainly a cornerstone of any successful mobile strategy, as Shahab was so kind in outlining for us earlier. STRATEG has developed over the years a core competency through our mobile solutions architects in understanding mobile device management ecosystem and the rapid change that's taking place within that ecosystem today. If you're analyzing any mobile device management solution, you always have to take a snapshot in time and understand that they are making changes as the market changes very rapidly, and you have to take that into account as you do your assessment and review. We've definitely got a deep domain knowledge and experience with SAP and their Afaria product, but we also have experience with all of the major MDM solution providers in the marketplace, so that we can provide the thought leadership and experience to our customers that they need when making an assessment or a decision like this. And we really bring it through a series, a process, if you will, of assessing the mobile device management requirements, actually viewing the configuration and implementation, including piloting the mobile device management solution, and then always have to view the ongoing support of a mobile device management solution, or the administration of it, or management, if you will, of how you manage it on a day-to-day basis. All of those components should go into your decision-making process as you review a mobile device management solution. We'll start out with the mobile device management assessment. They're much like Shahab described in his mobility strategy. It's really getting together with your stakeholders, understanding your business, your legal, your technical, your security requirements for your mobile deployment, and the balance that you're going to want to achieve between securing your mobile devices, but also providing the end user with that experience that they're expecting at the end of the day. And what we're trying to do in our presentation here is also continue on with our theme of some of the considerations that you should think about as you're looking through each one of these segments. So when you think of your mobile device management assessment, one of the considerations is, and many companies overlook this, is to actually review your incumbent. We find so many organizations that actually have a mobile device management solution, either one or two, already deployed. But when they go to make a selection for mobile device management, many times they don't review the incumbent or their current solution. Or they may review that solution, but they may be reviewing a solution that is maybe 1 or 2 rev levels behind where that organization is today in their development process. So we always recommend that if you have a mobile device management solution already in place and integrated into your infrastructure, take a look at it, make sure it's up to date, and see if perhaps your incumbent solution may meet the requirements that you have going forward. The other consideration that we encourage folks to look at is really understand the infrastructure requirements, particularly when you're talking about, on-premise versus the cloud. One of the things we find frequently is that once you begin speaking about a cloud implementation, customers tend to think, or folks tend to think that, well, if I'm in the cloud, I'm not going to require any infrastructure behind my own firewall. That's rarely the case. It's usually a combination of a cloud instance with some type of appliance or server behind your firewall that gives you that added protection for your email, for your mobile browsing, for your application management, and for your content management. So don't be caught in that budget surprise, if you will, of needing to have infrastructure, even if you are going with a cloud implementation. As you look at your configuration and implementation, it's important there to take a deep dive into the architectural review, including all of the integration points that need to take place, whether it's with your back-end systems for Active Directory or Domino, or perhaps an HR system. The administration setup and design is absolutely critical, and the content, user profile, and user policy creation and implementation is key to a successful deployment. Report creation and implementation, you really want to focus on what are the metrics. Mobile device management solutions provide an incredible amount of information, but you really have to boil that down to what pieces of information are going to be important to your organization, and how do you create a reporting structure that provides you detail on those pieces of information. One of the considerations here is really your user profiles and policies, and getting those set up early. They tend to be the long pole in the tent. So when you're looking at a mobile device implementation, mobile device management implementation, can take anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months, depending on the complexity of your environment, but also how quickly are you able to bring the stakeholders together and develop these profiles and policies for the users that you're going to onboard. And then finally, as you're looking at mobile device management, look at how are you going to administer it, or how are you going to manage your instance after the deployment. Once you've pushed out your software, you've enrolled your users, how do you manage the device and the enrollment, not only in the initial phase, but in later phases when you're moving people in and out of your organization. So how do you manage your configuration changes? How do you manage your moves, add changes and deletes? As associates change groups within your organization, move from one organization to another, or lose devices, or perhaps change devices so that you're moving a device from one individual to another. And some of the considerations here are really understanding your integration points really well. And what I mean by that is understanding that if you have AD integration, is it a two-way integration where if you update your MDM package, it updates AD, or when you update AD, does it actually update your MDM solution so that a user is removed or changed within a group, so that you're not having to do swivel chair activities in order to actually manage the instance on a day-to-day basis. And then another consideration is really planning for the call volumes during what I call events. And I look at events as things like the first enrollment. So you're enrolling your first groups of users. Oftentimes your call volumes to your help desk are going to increase tremendously. You may have a password change event, so simply changing a password can create a tremendous spike in the volumes of calls that you receive within a call center. Or to Shahab's point, you send out a new application, and that creates one of those events where your call volumes can go up. This is where organizations like STRATEG, an organization that provides services and staffs for these types of events, can help smooth those things out for your implementation of not only MDM, but your implementation of mobile in general. So those are some of the things to consider as you're looking at deploying mobile device management in your environment, and also some of the things to avoid as you're deploying mobile device management into your environment. So JB?
Thank you, Peter. Now I'd like to take a few online questions. And the first question is directed at Shahab. Shahab, how can a line of business influence mobile innovation in the enterprise?
JB, I think that's a great question. Just by way of the considerations I was talking about, in terms of how do you go about building your mobile roadmap. I think there's a lot in there to take away and utilize when it comes to involving lines of business and as well as lines of business proactively starting to think about what mobile opportunities exist. And so one of the things I would suggest there is to start to think about what are the types of use cases that are a struggle today, and also what are the types of use cases that are in the field that could lend themselves well to being considered as part of a mobile strategy. And go through an analysis of where's the business value and do some level of ranking that they can provide with some level of understanding of here's how the use case is envisioned to be working and here's what kind of value it can deliver. But along with that, also be able to think through some of the readiness components I talked about. Is the culture there for somebody to be able to use that in an engagement or an interaction with a customer? Oftentimes we've seen mobile applications that sound like a great idea, but they don't really fit the type of business or the interaction that you conduct on a day-to-day basis. So it feels very awkward to pull out a mobile device where it on paper may sound great, but when the application is rolled out, it doesn't really lend itself to the type of culture you have in an organization. Along with that, thinking through the readiness from a perspective of do you have the data to support the types of use cases. The line of business is the best judge of being able to understand does the application has to have some substance and grounded in some data. The last piece I would say is the line of business is the best judge of what really goes on in the business. So conducting day-in-the-life visits, we find them to be invaluable, where rather than defining the requirements, sitting down in an ideation session, have a basic framework of what the application is going to do, having some visualization of that application and taking it out to the people who will actually be using it through conducting a day in the life, I think is very, very important. The last piece I would say is understanding the demand that an application puts and the risk that you expose yourself to so that you have better, depending on the type of data that you're using in an application, is also very quickly shifting from IT and governance groups are not the only ones who have to safeguard that data. Line of business has to understand that as well. I would say the way to get involved is really to request these types of engagements by having IT and business come together under the COE umbrella that I had suggested earlier.
Okay, great. Thank you. And as a follow-up to that, Shahab, what trends do you see in the enterprise as it pertains to hybrid versus native versus mobile web development?
Yeah, great question, and I know that this is top of mind for a lot of people who are starting to progress with their mobile strategy. A lot of them starting with initially web-based applications or native, and now hybrid is a part of it as well. I would also introduce perhaps maybe building native applications using cross-platform development tools as another thing to consider as part of that decision now. Our point of view on that is, and from what we've seen in companies that have really solved that problem, is that you really will end up with a combination of all of the above. You need to know when to use which capability. We think that all of these have potential. In cases where you're really just getting updates or approval type of functionality in a mobile application, certainly web-based applications have a place in the portfolio for that. Other customer-facing interactions, mobile applications that are built using native or cross-platform tools lend themselves a little bit better to imparting the type of deep user engagement you're looking for. Likewise, if you have consumer-facing applications that you're going to deploy in the App Store, you will end up with having to support multiple operating systems, multiple resolutions. And so there, again, you will end up with applications that are broad enough where they will have some native capabilities, they'll potentially have some hybrid capabilities, and for some aspects of the application functionality, you may be deploying web-based technology. So I think it's no longer either or sort of a discussion now. It's how to use them in a way that it best serves your purpose and it doesn't compromise the user experience.
Understood. Excellent. Thank you. So, Peter, a couple of questions for you. First one, STRATEG manage mobile services. Can you support a diverse population of devices and applications, or are they specific to one category of product?
Thank you, JB. It's absolutely necessary to support a diverse population of devices and applications. In today's mobile ecosystem, having independence and having cross-platform capability is essential to partnering with the organizations that you need to partner with in order to create a mobile solution. So absolutely, all of our services have to be entirely independent and have to be able to support multiple platforms, multiple applications, and multiple operating systems.
Great, thank you. And then as a follow-up to that, Peter, how have you seen customers' expectations change as it relates to deploying mobile in the enterprise?
That's a great question, JB. We know mobile is changing really fast. I think one of the biggest things is organizations have realized that mobile is not only here to stay, but it's a great advantage to them, and it's going to continue to proliferate. So what we've seen is organizations move from denial of service, so we're not going to support mobile. We've seen them move to a command and control structure, but then move away from that because that doesn't give the user the experience that they're expecting when they pick up a mobile device, nor the independence that they want to use that device both for work purposes and personal purposes. And we've seen a much more collaborative environment develop within our customer base, where they're looking at more thought process towards governance and management versus a command and control or denial of service. So we see a much more collaborative environment developing. And then the other area that we've seen a big change in is that organizations are not always looking only internally to try to understand how they support mobile anymore. Mobile has become much too large for most organizations, so the population of mobile devices has absolutely exploded. So where an internal organization may have supported, maybe 2,000 to 3,000 mobile devices, now they're being asked to support 10 to 20 to 30,000 devices, and to bring those devices on board very quickly. So mobile is, like we said, much more different and complex now. So one of the big areas that we've seen a tremendous amount of change, and I think it's one of the reasons that Gartner has begun to analyze this space to provide guidance to their customers, is just large organizations, even that have traditional support desks, understanding the uniqueness of mobile and their mobile users, and asking the question, how can I get some help here? How do I help staff or augment my current capabilities so that we can support this mobile population that's going to continue to grow? And by the way, that's going to be a demand upon our organizations going forward if we plan to be successful in the marketplace.
Great. Thank you, Peter. And gentlemen, I want to thank you both. Very enlightening. So to summarize, delivering and supporting mobile in the enterprise is a complex undertaking. Organizations must develop a mobile strategy and plan and determine a roadmap for mobile across the enterprise. Additionally, developing a comprehensive MDM implementation strategy is imperative for securing corporate data. For participating in this webinar, we'd like to offer each of you a free 1-hour mobility advisory session. Please email straticsimplifies@stratixcorp.com to set up your appointment time. We look forward to working with you. Thank you for your time today. Have a great day.